I want to do it because it's fun. It's fun to do bad things.
So did you know that you could perhaps kill somebody?
It's the greatest podcast in the world.
Yes, but I wanted to do hood rat stuff with my friends.
Be punished for all of this?
Just a little bit, no video games for a whole weekend. I took my grandma cup because I got mad at my mom, and then I saw her on the floor I yanked the thing.
Isaac being a little bitch, texting me. The song's too loud.
No, it's not too loud. It just hits all those high. I don't know what they're called. High.
No, I think a lot of it has to do with the way that I place the microphone, because I actually have to place a microphone next to a speaker.
Oh, you're doing it wrong.
I'm doing it way wrong. I'm doing it wrong. Anyways, I was gonna do the whole song, but Rhonda's probably like, "What the fuck's going on here?" Awkward and a motherfucker, just sitting here doing nothing. But this is Say I Won't podcast, season 3, episode 14, and we do have a special guest. Before we introduce her, the other ugly bald dude is...
Oh, it's Isaac Chase.
And I am Edgar Antillon. And we do have a special guest. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Tell us about you.
So I am Rhonda Mary. Hey, y'all. So I am a YouTube content creator. I've recently gotten a little bit into the 2A, but I mostly focus on social and political commentary. And so I've been doing that for a couple of years now. It's been really fun, interesting. I've gotten a lot of support. It's given me opportunity to meet all type of people like you guys talking to y'all tonight. And yeah, it's just been really fun. So I don't know. But I'm from Mississippi. I'm a country girl. Born and raised.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty person.
We met, although Isaac doesn't remember because of
wait, hold on. Did we have dinner together? Did we have dinner together with like Argo J, and you were there for that?
Yes, that was.
Yes, I do remember you now.
I was just gonna throw you under the bus, and then fucking you came in clutch at the end, dude.
I did come in clutch right there under the wire.
Yeah, so we met at SHOT Show for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were just at this panel in Orlando. One of the things that I like about you is, this is going to come up all fucked up, but Isaac knows me.
Oh, I'm just playing.
No, but it's you're spunky, so you're very spunky. You're kind of outgoing, and so usually for me, because I'm kind of the opposite, I have to. This is all fucking fake. This is all fake. If you, you've kind of been around.
Thank you, guys. I have met this guy. It's not fake at all. Exactly who you are online, like how you talk. This is how you talk, like all the time, like at dinner. Like it doesn't matter. But believe it or not, I'm actually like shy.
Yeah,
like, I'm very shy. Like I talk to people that kind of talk to me, but I don't really just go like out of my way to meet new people.
Correct.
But you know, it's just kind of. So I've been told that, you know, if you just like picture people naked, like that never really worked for me because I'm, you know.
Yeah.
But I just pretend like I'm Jennifer Hudson in my head, and she's like super, outgoing and vivacious, and I'm like, so it makes
Well,
it
well,
easier.
and usually with that, and it sucks, but it's just like usually when you get that combination, when you get somebody who's like super spunky, they don't tend to be that bright. But that's kind of not the thing with you.
Don't say kind of. Don't say kind. You can't use kind of.
Oh yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
fair enough. Yeah. It's not the case with you at all, though. So I appreciate that you're fucking smart. You're
That's actually all Edgar has said about you since he came back from Orlando.
Really?
Yeah.
It's crazy because I have so many people. It's weird, and sometimes I'm still trying to process it because I have so many people that reach out to me like they think I'm really smart, which I guess I think I am too. But they just reach out to me. They tell me that they appreciate me like saying certain things, and then I have people that reach out to me and they're like, "Oh, I can't talk to my family about this, or I can't talk to my friends about this, but I just need to talk." And I'm like, okay, whatever, in my DMs and stuff like that. But like, I'm kind of like hard on myself because all I think is, man, I just need to learn more. That's all I feel.
that's a good thing. Not that you're hard on yourself. That I think that's just normal. I think everybody just hates themselves for whatever reason. I know I fucking despise myself. I just absolutely hate myself.
Really?
But no, if it keeps you learning, if it keeps you an open mind, then that's always a good thing. I was telling I forget who the fuck I was telling, but we were having this conversation, and this kind of just shows your objectivity and your willingness to just be I guess an advocate for the truth. So we were saying, I'm not going to say who it is because it's kind of controversial, the topic. It's not horrible, but it's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we were having this conversation about having gay friends, and you're like, and then you, without skipping a beat, you're like, so you just doing what white people do to us about having that one gay friend and stuff.
The conversation we were having.
Yeah. And it's just like, just in the interest of keeping you motherfuckers honest. Like,
right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's shit like that I appreciate. But I won't monopolize this. I don't know if Isaac has questions.
Well, I was going to say, Rhonda, when you said that Edgar is the same in person as he is online, that's 100% true, which makes it really hard to hang out with him. Especially around people who don't know him very well. So yesterday we were wrapping up a class at our location in Thornton and getting ready for a second class. And this student for the next class walks in, 40 minutes early?
And, pretty early.
And Edgar was like, "Oh, you're really early." And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, is that okay?" And Edgar's like, "Well, not really, but I was looking for something to hide behind.
Well, and then he asked me, he's like, "Is there anything I could do to help?" I was like, "Yeah, get out the way." Like that's what you can do.
So you though.
Yeah. Well, he asked.
Like, I don't know, you got the personality for it, I guess. And
I got the looks for it.
You got the looks for it. Yeah,
I got the looks for it. If I was fit, if I was like in shape and not a fat, short, fat Mexican, I think more people would take it a little bit more offensive.
It's true. Why is that though? Like
I don't know. I just have I'm ugly and fat and just weird looking. So like, yeah, this motherfucker is just, he can get away with that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So Rhonda, what part of Mississippi are you from?
I'm from like the deep part, like country part.
Country.
Yeah.
Like how big is the town that you come from?
Yeah, I don't know the geography like of where I'm from. That's super bad to say because when I go visit other people, they're like giving me tours and showing me all like the statues and the architecture, and I'm like, come look at our grass. We have sky, you know what I mean? So, but
How many people? Do you know how many
Small.
people are from in the town that you're from, roughly? Not exactly, but
Do I know how many people?
yeah, just to get an idea of the size of the town. Are we talking a few thousand people?
We have
We have a Walmart.
we have a Walmart. That's literally how we identify here. Like, we have a Walmart, we have stoplights, okay?
It's not that country.
Like, I'm not like from where they have the one stop sign. It's weird, right? Because when you're actually from here, it's levels. It's literally levels to country. Because if I go somewhere else, people think like, oh, like you're country. But if I tell my friends I'm country, they like, girl, what? Like, you a city girl. You know what I mean? And so I remember like years ago, I used to date this guy that was actually from the country. They had no Walmart. They had a Dollar General, $1 General. They had, I think, like mostly dirt roads. They had maybe like one 4-way stop or something. I can't remember if it was one. It must have been one street light, I think, in the whole town. And I'll never forget, like, I took him to Chili's one night and he thought I was a cat's meow. You know, so was get you a little appetizer.
It's like, this is culture. This is culture. Well, I lived in a town in rural New Hampshire that was like 13,000 people, and we had stoplights and we had a Walmart and all of that. But a lot of the towns around where we're from didn't even have stop signs. I mean, it was just like the highway goes through their town, and there's like 6 buildings in the town, and that's it. That's the whole town. So. So I've been around. I know people from towns like that. Very country.
Now people think, you know, because that's one side to it, and it's definitely like coming here is definitely not like a big city or anything, but it's not as bad as like the movies portray either, because they would think like have you thinking we're doing like horses and buggies. Like, we do horses, no buggies though. You know what I mean? They think they're still lynching people here. Like, nah, that's like, no, it's not happening. And honestly, like when I look at places on the TV, we probably, from what I've seen, typically have better race relations.
So that's a good, that's a good jumping off part, because when you spend all your time in the cities, your exposure to rural America is pretty much strictly through the media, and you get told how bad things are in places, but you never really experience it. So, you know, when you're what year were you born in?
Oh my God, where are you from again? Where are you from?
Not the South.
Y'all got a southern lady on the show. Y'all gotta, like, you ain't just gotta be full gentleman. You know what I mean? But like let's have a little culture here.
I can't believe this. I'm on a show with Edgar, and I'm the bad guy. Edgar's like, I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut and not get in trouble.
Yo, I've already been through it. Like, I've already gotten this. So I already know what's up.
Y'all are breaking all the rules in like the first 5 minutes.
All right, how about this? What decade were you born in?
No. The better way to just ask him, like, who's your favorite artist?
Oh, okay. All right.
That'll kind of give you a gauge of what
was your favorite? What was your favorite cartoon growing up?
My favorite cartoon, I'm probably like somewhere around like the Rugrats.
Okay, got it. Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
All right, cool. All right. Yeah. So you are in one way or another
early 20s.
In one way or another, you're a millennial. And Edgar and I are both millennials as well. Like, I'm right on the edge. I was born in 81. And Edgar
I just want to note this. Now everybody's in the comment. You can't answer. Shut the fuck up. Everybody's wondering the same shit. So what the fuck ever.
So Edgar was born in what, 86? No, 85?
84.
84. Okay, so we're kind of on the older, a little bit on the older millennial side, but but millennials have kind of grown up, especially in the 2000s, being told how horrible the world is. And and I see on the news, I see stories about what's going on in Birmingham or in Atlanta or in Louisville, but in the rural areas, it seems like, from my own personal experience, people generally get along pretty well in rural areas.
People mind their business. People mind their business. It's people are chill. We're slow paced. I guess people in the cities, y'all just got somewhere to be fast. Y'all all up under each other. You're all up in each other's business. You know what I mean? Out here, you don't have to worry about somebody because you barbecuing or you at the park with your dog or, all this other stuff. It's just like people are really, really friendly. Like even when I travel up and through like Texas, people are just friendly. Like they just speak. It's just hello, how you doing? Like random people, even older people will just randomly spark up conversations with me. Like, I'm grabbing coffee or something. Here I don't know what the heck they are doing, like to these Black people in these schools and cities, particularly in New York and California. I don't know what the heck they be doing, but some going on. I don't know. I can't speak for it because I'm not there, so I can't speak for other people. But I know I see the same stuff on social media. Yeah.
Well,
and we don't have our own problem. Let me please instead have mercy, because certain people, they'll try to put words in my mouth. So we do have our own set of problems. One of them being that we do have a big prison population here. That is one thing that I don't necessarily want to say, I wouldn't necessarily call myself like an advocate, but I'm very aware of kind of what's going on with the prison system. And it's one thing that I speak out against often.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I've seen with smaller towns, and this is what I've seen in Mexico, in small towns in Mexico as well. My parents are from a very small town. Well, it used to be a small town in Mexico. It's kind of grown up a little bit, but still you're talking about under 10,000 people in that spot. Not really huge. One of the things that goes on in Mexico and that I've seen where Isaac's parents are at right now is that everybody just, when you're driving, everybody kind of just waves.
Yes.
Everybody just waves. And that's what we did when I was growing up in Mexico is that waving, like everybody's just like waving at each other. And it's, you're going to school together. The only thing I don't like about small communities like that, you talk about everybody minding their own business. They mind their business to an extent, but they know your business.
Yeah,
everybody knows everybody fucking business, and that's the only thing I don't like. Like, sure, they won't approach you if you're barbecuing, but they sure know when the fuck you showed up, who showed up, at what time they showed up, who brought the dessert.
A lot of us got that little permanent thing, like blind,
Yeah.
I think that kind of goes two ways, because it lets everybody know that the whole community is watching you. And at the same time, it's also like, hey, climb up out of my butt and leave me alone. When I lived in that town in New Hampshire, it got to the point where I couldn't leave the house without running into somebody I knew. And that irritated me. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
But in general, you're accountable to pretty much the whole town for everything you do. And you're not really going to get away with much. And I mean, even the police officers had a reputation. Individual police officers had reputations in the town. Like there was one cop that was like Brian the gay cop, and then there was this woman cop who was nice, and then there was another woman cop who was really mean, and then we had the wife beater cops, and like everybody knew everybody, even the police officers. So it does provide a level of like, it's harder to just fly off the handle and be an a-hole to everybody, because everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows what you've done. And And I think when people talk about community policing, I think they're kind of hitting on that to a degree, although I think they remove from the whole picture the idea that police, if you hire police officers to watch after your town, occasionally they're going to have to get violent with people, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but community policing, like the term itself, doesn't seem like a bad thing to me.
It doesn't. And I actually think, we should try to get back to that to some extent. But like you said, it's much different in rural areas, because when you're in cities, everything is so fast paced. You have so many people. And then it's just a hub. Like, that's where everybody comes to, like, work, to eat, to party. And then some of those people go home. So, you have way more traffic going in throughout those areas. But when I just look at the police system in general, I don't think anything like, what was originally intended, as far as the how involved they are. Like, it's just certain things police officers just should not be called for. Like, they shouldn't. And why we to ignore it, like I don't understand. One thing I was saying, about Trump and this whole law and order message. Like, yeah, I think, okay, that's probably going to work for, like, getting him in his next 4 years, particularly when Biden is just saying something about the rioting and looting and stuff like that. But just in general, when we're talking about on a local level, when your message is law and order, people, especially in these bigger cities, typically just do not receive that message as well as telling them what the policing is actually a result of. The actual policing is a result of government overreach. Like, it's a policing a result to putting too much responsibility on police. It's horrible, on a burden on taxpayers, right? So when you start listing off these things of why policing is the way it is, then it starts to click. You know what I mean? But to certain people, when you say law and order, and it seems like when they're in the cities and that's all they've known is the government overreach, somebody trying to hem you up for a little sack of weed or whatever the case may be, my law and order is going to be different from your law and order, right? So I just think it's a way that we can package these messages where community policing and less government sounds good to, like, everybody. I just don't see how that's not, that wouldn't be an advantage for, like, everybody involved.
And one of the things that I'm starting to kind of with the policing thing, one of the things that I'm starting to be convinced of is that there's also a huge lack of education within the people who are doing the policing. So you have people who know absolutely nothing. They spend 21 weeks in some camp, and then they ship them out, and there's really you get a very condensed version of what policing actually is. You don't get a full constitutional thing. I've been reading about I've been reading about other countries who their cops have to go to a 2-year program, and they have to have in policing, not just in anything, in actually policing, because then you read about the Constitution, you read about actual laws, and it's not just pull out the gun and shoot him if you think you're at risk type situation. It's a full-blown educational thing. I'm sure a lot of it is part tactics and stuff like that, as they should have, but you have no education, and the cop goes out and is basically just do what you want because you got a badge and you got a gun.
And this is something that, like, I've been talking about recently. Like, you're absolutely right. Like, a lot of these cops, they don't know the law. They certainly don't know the Constitution. If they do, they don't uphold it, And so this is another reason why I'm trying to convince more people and inspire more people to also do firearm training, because honestly, you have so many people in the 2A world that are so, when it actually comes to firearm de-escalation, like handling certain situations, knowing when to use your firearm, knowing what actually constitutes self-defense. You have a lot of people in the 2A community that are way more educated than police officers when it comes to these things. And so what happens is, when you train with these people, when you learn from these people, it kind of gives you a little idea of how police officers think, how they work, and sometimes how you can even maneuver. I don't want to say like better than them, but it just, you're more empowered because you're more educated.
Yeah, and I think that from my observation, I think police have been getting better and better training on defensive use of force tactics, because that's, in theory, what's going to keep them alive in a gunfight. So there is a push for more training, but that push for more training is really one-dimensional. Like, obviously we don't want cops who don't know how to shoot.
Correct.
Obviously we don't want cops who don't know how to handle a gun.
Correct.
But the focus being 100% on officer safety, it seems like all the new training and all the extra training they get is for how to kick ass. And, like, when that's not even a big part of their job. It's a very important part of their job, but it's not a lot of what they do on a daily basis.
Well, and I wouldn't even call it kick ass. And I know what you're saying, but a lot of these cops don't even know how to fight. And I think that's why they go to the gun or go to tools that are somewhat unnecessary sometimes, because it's just like, I just don't know how to whoop some ass. I just seen a video, and I don't know what happened. All I know is this dude started fighting the cops, and the cops never drew a gun. They're just like, well, fuck it, we're gonna fight then. And they start whooping each other's ass. And it was one of the weirdest fucking endings to this video. Was the dude just walked away, and the cops were like, I guess one of us got her ass beat. I don't know who won here. and all the confusion, everybody's like, okay, we're good. Like, you got to swing, I got to swing.
That reminds me of another video I saw. This is an older video of this guy who's getting belligerent with a cop, and the cop just puts his hands up, and they just get into a boxing match. And the cop eventually beats him in this boxing match, and then I think jumps on top of him and arrests him. But he doesn't like pull his taser out. He's like, all right, if we're gonna fight, let's fight.
Yeah. and I think a lot of them just don't know how to fight and don't know how to kick ass, and they don't have that, I guess, quote unquote warrior mentality. They just have like, I just have a little penis, and I have to overcompensate by everything.
Some of them are still fat. Like, if there are certain specifications to be in the military, why can you be a fat police officer? Like, why is that possible? You know what I mean? Those are things we need to look at.
Yeah. So whenever I feel like,
am I about to like fight you? I mean, maybe, but probably not.
I feel like whenever I start talking about this, I have to put out the disclaimer that I really don't know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, there is a real problem going on, and people who want to act like there's not a real problem going on are not paying attention. I think that a lot of the protesting has gotten hijacked by some politically inclined groups. Absolutely. But I think that the sentiment that's supporting a lot of these protests has been there for a long time. It was there for Rodney King. It was there before Rodney King, and it's still here. People are getting brutalized by the cops when they shouldn't get brutalized, and the people eventually are going to have enough of it, and they're going to say something, or they're going to do something about it. And I think if we ignore that and we just say, look at all these Marxists out here trying to take over the country, we're missing an opportunity to identify and maybe start to solve one of these problems. So when George Floyd got killed, it was kind of a Rodney King moment because the whole thing was on video, and It was so obviously excessive, and it just tapped into a very strong sentiment that reaches really from coast to coast. That there's something not right here, and it's people respond really strongly to that when that's an authority figure. It's not just a problem going on between two people in the neighborhood. It's the authority with their knee on your neck pushing you down, and that's a real problem.
And the thing is, like they try to make it seem like, you know what I mean, it's a us versus them problem. It becomes too much of a political problem when in fact it's like a we problem. It's a we problem. And in some ways, I feel like a lot of these issues could be handled, very simply. Like we said, a lot of the police officers don't even know the Constitution. And some of these things, if we were to if people would just call it what it is government overreach. You cannot sit here because recently it's been, the 10 most dangerous places are the Democrat-led cities. You know what I mean? Like, that's the new talking point. Okay, cool. If you can talk about these mayors and these governors and how corrupt they are, and they're this and they're that, and they're so bad, their police departments are an extension of them, literally. And so if people would frame it that way, right, then it starts to make sense. Okay, now what do we want to do? We want to go in some of these places, like you look at Chicago, some of the toughest freaking gun laws, right? You will in some of these areas, you will go to jail just for having a gun in your possession. Look at like New York. I just posted this. I think this was earlier today or maybe yesterday. A young lady getting raped in New York, train station, subway station, broad daylight, right? And so to know that some of these people just trying to defend their lives, even just having the means, just carrying it on them to defend their lives. Now this is a charge. Now this is an interaction with a police officer that you never had to have because you didn't necessarily commit a crime just because you had a firearm, right? And then we think about people like I talked about marijuana. Is that really worth, because somebody wants to smoke a freaking, I don't know what they're called these days, like joints or what's the other name?
Yeah, just playing it and whatever.
Nice,
just
nice
play,
cover.
nice cover. What is that called? The weed? The weed? Is it reefer still? Are we still calling it reefer?
We call it grass now. It's grass.
I mean, I'm not necessarily one of the cool kids, so I just want to make sure I was saying it correct.
Are you talking about a blunt? A blunt?
That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, blunt.
But you know what I mean? Because a young person may have a blunt. Like, is it really worth the interaction that could be escalated? Really? I mean, really? Is it? You know what I mean? So some of these things are not actually, like, that is a tax burden. There were just 30-something kids found out in Atlanta, like missing kids, freaking human trafficking, sex trafficking. There is literally slavery going on in America, and you focusing on the kid with a blunt? Like, how can we all not see that fixing some of these issues would be beneficial for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the lack of interest from the community too. You were talking about the lady who was getting raped. Like, nobody helped her. Like it's just nobody helped her. And it seems like everybody's just oh, well, it's not affecting me, so I'm just gonna record this lady getting raped until it affects me. And it's just like, we're no longer, if it's not happening to me, yeah, like we've seen the contrast in the hypocrisy and how self-absorbed we are as communities. Is in Kenosha, the dude was a hero. In Oregon, when they killed the other dude, all those were all pieces of shit. So and it flips. If you're on the other side, the kid in Kenosha is a piece of shit, and the people up in Oregon that killed that one dude is a hero. like it just we're so in these little bubbles, and we don't look at the facts for what they are. So this lady's getting raped, and everybody's just recording it like, oh, this sucks, and it's just like, yeah, but how do we change it? Like, why didn't anybody dick slap the dude? Like, why didn't anybody just fucking karate chop him? Why didn't everybody look at yeah.
So two things. Like, first thing is, I don't know what these phones have done to us, but it's literally, they have a term for it. It's called like the bystander effect. And so I don't know if these people like freeze, if they're like so zombied out or what. It's some type of weird phenomena, right? And then on the other side, like I try to tell people, particularly women, like nobody's gonna protect you like you will, unless and shoot, even these days with husbands, right? It's like 50-50 depending on, with the, you got some husbands that say they can tilt the scale depending on how they feeling that day, you know what I mean? And people can, it's a free country, you know what I mean? I've heard people can change, halfway woman, halfway man, might be feeling like a Zen or a Zir today or anything. But anyway, all right, so nobody's gonna protect you like you will, right? Unless you have somebody there that has taken some type of oath or has that commitment to you, that is going to protect you, maybe like a father or a husband or a brother would. However, if you're not in that situation and you are alone, you can't, man, we're living in a generation, you cannot depend on these people to protect you, literally. And that's why women are going to have to get armed, learn some type of techniques, something to empower themselves, man. They be like, it's so weird, man. This generation be like, just tell men not to rape. You think raping men just sitting up listening, waiting for me to tell them not to rape somebody? No, that's not happening. I have a better chance of reaching you and telling you, hey, like, arm yourself, because there's crazy people out here. Regardless of what we tell people, this or that, it's still gonna be crazy people out here. And so unfortunately, man, that's just like how it is. Like, and it's probably getting worse. When we have a culture where we're actually telling them, and I was talking to somebody about this on their podcast live last night, when we have a culture where we're actually telling them that masculinity is toxic, when in fact it's the absence of masculinity that's toxic.
You got to pimp out that podcast, pimp it out.
Yeah, because when a man is actually masculine, like one of the first things he wants is protect. That's actually the peak of masculinity. Anything opposite is lack of masculinity. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what podcast was that on? Pimp it out.
50 Shades of Red. 50 Shades of Red. I think that's the name of the podcast. But the guy's name is 50 Shades Soul G. I know that's his,
okay.
That's his name. And he
Isaac will find it here in a little bit.
Yep, I
the
found it.
So it hasn't aired yet. We just
got it.
Do it live. It's gonna come out the week of the Solutionary Summit. I need to make sure I mention that tonight too, so don't let me forget.
Well, yeah. So let's I want to talk about that this because that's kind of part of the cancel culture, and I know a lot of people are talking about the cancel culture, so I don't want to get too much into it, but that's 100% true. Like, I've been fighting this for a very long time now. I come from a culture that is probably on the extreme side of the ultra masculinity, the macho shit. So I definitely don't think it needs to be there. Even growing up, like when I first got with my wife, I was 15 years of age, and one of my biggest contentions with my mom was I would come home from whatever, and then my mom's big complaint was like, why doesn't she have food ready for you? And it's just like, because I didn't like ask. I didn't like, I'm not expecting that. Like, it's just, I'm just a completely different human being. Not to say that I don't like food. Now it's 20 years later that we've been together and shit like that, but I thoroughly enjoy the traditional roles, like very, very much enjoy the traditional roles. And a lot of people see that as like, well, that's like, it's 2020 and feminism and shit like that. Like has nothing to do with that. It's just I thoroughly believe there's a role for me and a role for my wife. I don't think they mix. There's a lot of shit that I can't do that a mom does. Like, I'm not very good at the nurturing shit. Like, yeah, I can tell my kids I love you and I'm proud of you, but it doesn't come off the same way as when mom hugs you. Like, it just, I know it doesn't. It doesn't. Like a mom's hug is different. Like it's warmer. It's I don't know. It's a little bit more soothing, a little bit more healing. And then a dad's ass whooping has more fucking power behind it than a mom's ass whooping. Like it just does.
And I'm sure the good thing about that is that you also don't beat other people over the head just because of how they decide to deal in their relationship, right? Like it's a very.
Well, I make fun of them, but but yeah.
I get it, right? But it's still kind of like a personal, because like I'm the same way too. It's just like I don't know what the other girls got going. You know what I mean? And I guess I don't judge. It's a free country, but kind of already knowing like, okay, bam, bam, bam. I handle this. It's no questions. Like I know, like this is my area. I'm good. And this is his area. He's good. It's so peaceful. It's just smooth. It's relaxing. Why else that no, I imagine it's to jobs and like whose work is supposed to be whose work, and now you're dipping into your coworkers' job because they not picking up their slack, and now it's causing tension, and so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the one of the things I think that we're seeing on a grand scale now is the deconstruction of the family. That it's been in vogue to say that it's traditional family is not a requirement. You can totally raise good people without the family structure, and it's definitely possible to do that, but it's definitely not ideal. And I think that it does undermine what people understand as their role in society. Like I can do anything. I could be anything, but I'm built for certain things, and I will probably naturally be better at some things than other things. And I can learn and I can compensate and everything. But when you see that Subway video, you're seeing a bunch of people who don't know what their role is in society. They don't know what their job is. They've been just told that they're in the way, or they've been given a role that doesn't necessarily fit. And so you see somebody doing something heinous like that, and your response is like, well, I don't want to do anything that'll get me in trouble, so I'll just record it, and then I'll be I'll have done that at least, and so it seems to me that people are kind of frozen in place right now. They're frozen they don't know what to do with themselves, and they don't know how to handle themselves in any situation. David was saying that it seems like we've got in the chat room, we've got a whole lot of people who don't know how to solve any problems. Whole lot of people who they don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know how to take charge. They don't know how to solve a problem. And I don't know if that's like that seems accurate to me, but I don't know if that's my boomerness coming through.
Oh shit! I didn't have the song set up.
Oh, the boomer. Oh man.
Yeah.
So yeah. Did we? We're getting some weird noises coming through. Edgar, do you know what that is? Sounds like an alien calling.
I think it's Rhonda's computer.
Oh, okay.
We can't hear you.
It sounds weird.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears. I want to know how Rhonda got introduced to the Second Amendment world, the gun world. I won't even say the Second Amendment world. I'll just say the gun world, because Second Amendment is like a very narrow aspect of that.
Can y'all?
No, it's coming in and out.
Okay, what about now?
Yeah.
Okay. So it all kind of happened like simultaneously, because at the time that I was like kind of starting my YouTube platform and learning more about like history and laws and learning more about the Constitution and things like this. So I was kind of like already on this journey, and I ended up being in like crazy hit and run accident. And it got kind of crazy because, you know, the guy hit me and ran, and then I chased him. It was bad, y'all. Like I don't think I've ever been like that before. Something happened. I don't know. But yeah, I chased him. Not very far. It was like not very far. And I'm just like, oh, he's like pull over. And like mad, like you just hit my car. So he pulls over and he gets out. He walks up to my car. I let my window down, and me, I'm like, you know, I'm thinking I'm just about to say, sir, well, here's my insurance. Where's yours? This man walks up to my window. He's like cussing me out. Like I can never forget the looks like in his eyes. And I was actually on my phone with a friend at the time. And I don't even know. I was just telling him like, you know, call my mom, like tell her I've been in an accident, because I just didn't know what was about to happen. But anyway, the guy ended up leaving again, and I called, you know, to like file a police report and stuff like that. And it was a police officer, a woman officer, a police officer, a black woman. She was like, "Girl, you ain't have a gun? I would have been shooting out my back window saying I feared for my life." Now, look, okay, let me preface this. That wasn't like the best advice, you know, looking back on the situation. However, it's like a little light bulb went off, because the thing I remember most is the guy was so close to me that I could see the ring around his eyes. And when you're that close to somebody, and we're talking about, this is a man, you know what I mean? No matter how empowered or how this or that I think I am, when I have a man squaring up with me, you're going to realize, especially when you have nobody else around to egg you on, how vulnerable you are in the moment. And I never felt this vulnerable forever. And so I never wanted to feel that again. And after that, I think it was like maybe a couple of weeks after that, I went and got my first firearm, and I was just like, I don't ever want to be that vulnerable again. Now, I must say, to follow this story up, because like I am a responsible person and I want other people to be responsible. There are certain places in that store where, had I used that firearm, I would be in jail right now, right? Because by me following him, if he would have came up to my car and then I would have shot him, it would have kind of, you know, been, well, if you fear for your life, why did you follow him? You know what I mean? And so it would have been up to a jury to decide, you know, oh, was she just some type of angry road rage, gun toting? She just was ready to use that gun, you know, how they will try to paint this narrative. So I want to be very clear that, you know, in one interaction, right, every second to second changes when you should be able to, when you're actually legally able to call that self-defense. So that absolutely would not have been a good situation. I don't think, looking back, to use my firearm. There could have been things I did differently. There could have been ways to de-escalate that situation. However, just knowing how that was, I just never wanted to be that vulnerable again. And so with training, right, you learn those things, like when you can use your firearm, when you can defend yourself and things like that. And as a gun owner, is very important to have a level head, because one, you either like literally hold, you know, this is like, this thing can be like death, right? But also, as a gun owner, you now know that other people can be out here with that same, you know, tool to protect themselves. You happen to protect yourself. They may have that same exact tool, right? And so now you start to think differently about how you interact with somebody. Because that guy, what if he was a road rage guy, right? But what if he would have been so mad that day that he came to my window and I wouldn't be here today telling his story, you know? So everything just starts to work differently once you start becoming trained and stuff like this. So,
so when you had that interaction, had you had any other previous experience with guns? Like, even if you didn't own any, did you have family members that had them? What was like your level of experience with guns prior to that event?
Every single thing I had ever heard about guns was negative before then. Every single thing. Guns were always for white supremacists, gangsters. I don't want nobody to take my black card. Let me back up a little. Okay.
You're gonna find yourself on the wrong side of Black Lives Matter. You better be careful.
So, and that's too, by the way, Mrs. What's the other thing called? Reefer? Is it?
Right now, Kamala Harris is more black than you are right now.
Look, I'm a notable exception, okay? But you know, it was really just for gangsters, white supremacists, and school shooters. Like, that was all I ever heard. I think my only experience I ever remember before that having a gun was my dad had some type of, I just remember it being a small gun. It might have even been like a revolver or something. But it was hid in a little like decorative bowl that was all the way on the top shelf of our like bookcase. And you know, kids, they climb up on everything, they look at everything. And at some point my dad just ended up getting rid of it or whatever, but he never used it, never trained with it. He didn't have any ammo or anything. I think it was probably just handed down or something.
Yeah.
So when you got interested in guns because of this event that happened, like what direction did you go? Did you have somebody you could talk to? Did you just walk into the gun store? What was your direction?
So I remember telling this guy, I was like, yeah, I think I want to. No, as a matter of fact, I'm remembering now. Before I went and got my firearm, I was telling him I was thinking about getting one. And he was like, okay, cool, let's go shooting. And so, you know, like this particular friend, I can't think of, I think he's like in Ohio or something, but he lives in like the rural part, right? So I just remember, like, as we were on the way to the firearm range, he was teaching me how to load the magazine in a car. And I'm looking like, do you see how both of us look? I don't know what they do, but I ain't trying to be the next hashtag. You know what I mean? Like, that was my, you know. But as we were headed to the fire range, he was teaching me like how to load the mag and all these different things, telling me like the different parts of the firearm. And then when we got there, he kind of laid them all out on the counter, and we just shot like all these different type of like 9mm. And I just after that I was like, oh, it's like it's not that bad. It's not as bad as I thought, you know.
Yeah, and one thing that I appreciate about one of the other things that I appreciate about you is that you don't, I don't think you've ever pretended to be a Second Amendment individual. You support it, but you've never been like, oh, I'm the new gun bunny and shit like that. Like, no. She look at her, she's like, fuck, no.
First of all, I'm not a gun snob, right?
Correct.
If I shoot you with anything, as long as it shoots, okay?
Like, you're not a gun reviewer, you're not necessarily a gun person. You kind of view guns in a very similar fashion as I do. Is they're there to keep me away, keep me safe from other people, and make sure I stay free.
Right.
Like that's it. Not really a gun snob, not any of that stuff. Also, the other thing that's appreciated is you didn't go the gun bunny way, because it's so easy for women to just flash a little and then jump that way. Like you've allowed just your being able to articulate stuff in the way that it needs to be articulated. I mean, if I'm being honest, you've said a lot of stuff that a lot of people have said, but you've got the face that people are going to pay attention to. And you didn't have to go the other way. I mean, I got to be honest. If you've listened to my other podcast, I thoroughly appreciate the Gun Bunnies for what they are.
Not too bad to look at, huh?
No, not at all. But it's always refreshing to see somebody that's okay. You could be smart, you could be attractive, but not have to take it that way without in order to be listened to.
And then, like, my thing is, I am honestly trying to inspire people that, yeah, like, somebody looks like me. I can shoot a firearm. I can carry every day. I can support the Second Amendment. And I think, to do that, it takes something different than making this a prop or making going the gun bunny route. So, I think those girls, a lot of them are cool. Like, I follow their stuff, however, I think we have maybe two different goals that we're trying to achieve. And mine was more for an advocacy standpoint. And that's why I said it worked perfectly, because this was already kind of going along with everything that I was learning, right? And then even looking at the history of gun ownership, particularly for Black people in America, that makes me feel even more proud. I'm like, heck yeah, I want to have a gun now, Yeah.
That might be why your dad had that gun. It was probably given to him. I'm wildly speculating here, though, but it's possible it was just given to him by his family as a tradition of like, look, we're not on the plantation, we're not slaves anymore, but you can never trust these people, and you've got to have something to protect your family with, like that history, especially in the deep South in Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, and that history is undeniable. And we were talking recently about the Brown Lake, I think it was called the Brown Lake. I can't remember now. It was basically a shootout between a bunch of Black people who the KKK was trying to intimidate, and the Black people. This was in North Carolina. They were like, "No, we're not putting up with that," and they showed up in force with shotguns and rifles, and they let those people know, like, you're not gonna intimidate us in our own home, So that is an important element, I think, especially if you're from the South, to be aware of, because as much as we want to talk about the Second Amendment is our heritage, you guys, you being from the South and being Black, you have a strong heritage in gun ownership too,
Absolutely. And that stuff is hidden from us. It's a lot of rebellions and riots where people, were armed.
So what is I know how this came about for Hispanics, for Mexicans, and really when I say Hispanics, for me personally, I can only speak for Mexicans because I'm not Puerto Rican, I'm not from Central America, I grew up with Mexican parents. That it tends to be a point of contention with a lot of Hispanics, but I can only speak for what I understand, and I am Mexican. I'm not from Costa Rica, I'm not from any of that stuff, and their culture, although similar, it's still different. Like the way we speak is different. It's just very different. So, and I don't think I've ever asked this of any of our Black guests. So, an original question for you is, from the Mexican perspective, like, we see guns as a nation in Mexico as a taboo, like straight taboo. There are hunters, there are people who do that, but now in the U.S., Mexicans see it as a taboo, not because of the crime, because obviously cartels are very well hidden here in the U.S. People think they don't exist here, but they do. It's just very well hidden. We've got connections with cartels all the way to Chicago, and and that type of stuff. But what is it about the Black community where it's just like they see it as that taboo? They see it like, what happened from, where's that separation? Where's that gap?
That, like, it's the media. It is literally the media. Guns, like firearms, I think were actually people taking up arms to protect themselves, were more, I don't want to necessarily say prevalent, but more accepted and maybe more desired, right after slavery, going right up into the civil rights, right? Like Malcolm X is somebody particularly that I admire, and he talked about how important firearms were for Black people in America. I think that taboo has come from the media. I think that taboo has come from moving up into the 80s, where you started to you started to take the fathers out of the home. This is when the prison industrial complex really started to boom, when you had the the biggest onset of the war on drugs, the crack era. You had all these things, right, that came along with crime. Instead of people being able to separate the two, they just started to see, oh, gun must be crime. You don't need a gun if you're not committing a crime, right? Like, you don't live that gangster lifestyle, you know what I mean? So why would you need a gun? And so I think that just evolved over time. And like I said, so much of that history is hidden from us. Because just imagine how many people will feel empowered if they actually knew about, when you have somebody like a Kanye West, and don't get me wrong, like I actually like Kanye West. I think he's a smart person, but sometimes you really gotta this is now I'm gonna lose my southern cool point, because I was trying to say, what they say, you gotta take the meat and leave the bone a lot with Kanye West, because he'll get on TV and say something like slavery was a choice, right? Because in school they teach you Martin Luther King, they teach you about, all these different like stories about slavery, but hardly do you hear about Harriet Tubman. If you do, you don't hear about how her firearm was very important, right, for the work she was doing. You don't hear about Nat Turner, and you don't hear about how gun control happened in Richmond, Virginia. I was just recently in Richmond, Virginia at a 2A Black Lives Matter rally, which was really surprising. We can talk about that if y'all want. But so much of this history is hidden from us. And whether people want to admit it or not, a lot of times with this generation, if it's not on the TV, people aren't going to know.
Yeah. I was at a panel that I spoke at here in Denver, and it was a diversity thing. It wasn't a gun thing, which was pretty cool for me to be part of a panel that wasn't gun related. I often hate being pigeonholed as the gun guy within the community, but so
well, let me stop you though. But you do want to be the Mexican gun guy.
I do want to be the Mexican gun guy, mostly because there is no Mexican gun guy.
And then as soon as another one comes along, you'll be like, all right, I'm done with this.
I'm done with this shit. Yeah. But I did bring up how all gun control is racist in its roots. And some dude wanted to have that discussion about how is it not? Like, how do you articulate that? How do you tell people? And it's not that you're trying to prove to anybody anything, because I think there's a lot of people like, oh, you need to prove it to me. Like, no, at that point, I'm never going to prove it to you, because you come with your own made up statistics and your own made up facts. So it's really hard to prove to anybody. And I'm not talking about show them evidence. I'm talking about they want me to switch their mind and their thinking. And often it's almost difficult, impossible to do. But how do you articulate that? How do you present like, hey, this is why gun control laws are racist?
So like first of all, literally, in Richmond, Virginia is when gun control first started. And it was directly targeted to recently freed men, right? Because now, even though you're free, we don't want you to have the ability to stand against the clans members. We don't want you to have the ability to stand against vigilantes and protect yourself, right? A lot of these people are still able to terrorize Black people. And so now you had these laws and these codes, Black codes being put into place to discourage Black people from protecting themselves. And then going into the 60s, 70s, I'm really bad with dates. You have the NRA literally supporting gun control now because Black Panthers started carrying, right? Carrying in public. What are we saying here? What type of message are we sending when the NRA is supposed to support gun rights? So like there's just a long line of history. Even now, if we want to talk about today, look at the cities with the highest populations of Black people. That is where you have some of the most gun control. So what are you saying? Are you saying that you don't want law-abiding citizens that are also in those cities for whatever reasons, whether it's their family there, whether it's financial reasons, whether it's the history of living there for them? You don't want these people to be able to protect themselves? So these are things we have to look at.
Yeah. I think a lot of people disregard the 13th Amendment. That was really the biggest, one of the most racist laws that exists. Really, is just, yeah, sure, we freed people, but now we're making it a way to make slavery legal and constitutional.
Right. But like one thing I will say about that, and this is why I struggle with like Republicans a little bit, and I was talking about this earlier. Well, I kind of alluded to this, is that when you have police officers that don't want to follow the constitutions, and then you have the party that allegedly, right, is the party of freedom. But I say, all right, if you're the party of freedom, let's pay attention to this Constitution in its totality. And it's like, oh, no, you're taking it a little too far. Now the first, second, and 13 are good enough for us, but all that other stuff, don't even worry about it. You know what I mean? But literally, right, if we were to pay attention to these things, if you had it, if you had it where Black people were able to, if you stop things like stop and frisk, you stop seizing people's property and assets. Okay, every year you have people's properties who are property that's being seized, and they turn out to not even be guilty. You have people's privacy being trampled. All these other things that we have, that you have things, privacy issues, like when we're even talking about no knock warrants. There are so many other things that if you would actually focus on these things, adhere to these things, that would in itself lessen a lot of the people that are going into the prison system in the very first place.
Yeah.
And so where is the disconnect? And this is why I was saying this policing issue, this government overreach issue, it's an us issue.
Yeah.
Because people are not upholding what they say allegedly, right? Like this country is founded on. I asked people the other day, I said, name 3 people in Congress, because it's only 3. I said, name 3 people in Congress who actually believe in the Constitution. And it's sad I have to clarify this, right? But that means in its totality. Now, all of the people that were on me earlier, because I said, y'all, like, you don't want to follow the Constitution, you only care about the first, the second, and the 13th. Now you can't even name people in your own freaking Congress who actually stick to the Constitution, believe in it, give two craps about it. What do you think that says about the general population?
And answer that truthfully, not just because they represent the party that you fully believe in.
Right.
Because they'll give you three, but they won't give you they won't talk about Rand Paul, or they won't talk about the people who, in my opinion, I'm not gonna say the three because I don't want you to yell at me.
It was like,
yeah.
I won't say it was a trick question because
Yeah.
I had some people in mind, but I also wanted to see, and I wanted to point out the hypocrisy a little bit too, because what does that say?
Yeah.
I'll say these people are about freedom, but then you can't even name them. What principles are you even talking about here?
Correct.
You know?
Or name them without saying anything negative about the other party.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could do that both ways every single time. Like, tell me why Trump is better than Biden without saying the name Biden.
Right.
And vice versa. Tell me why Biden is better than Trump without saying Trump.
Right.
Very few people can actually articulate that stuff.
So I wanted to ask you, like, it's really easy to point out all the problems, and like there's no end to the list of serious problems that we're facing. But when you kind of got started on being a voice, a public figure, to whatever extent that means these days, because I feel like everybody's a public figure at this point. But with your advocacy and your, you're showing up to the panel that Edgar was at in Orlando. What is your goal? What is your immediate goal, and what is your long-term goal for accomplishing what you're trying to accomplish?
Like, my biggest thing is I just want to be more visible. I want to show women that look like me. It took a woman that looked like me to be the first person and tell me, "Girl, you ain't got a gun."
Who was that?
The police officer that I was.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And it hits different. Like, it resonates. So that person that she was for me, like, I want to be that person for other women, right? And don't get me wrong, anybody can be inspired by me, because I have all different type of people DMing me. Oh my God, like, I just went and got my first firearm. Oh my God, I'm about to go do training now. I never even considered this. I might go try to see, to shoot and things like that. That's literally my ultimate goal. And like, honestly, I don't think this is gonna be my, we'll see what happens, but I just don't think, I haven't really worked out a long-term plan with this, because my advocacy, my love has always been working with children in mentorship, and I've kind of took that away now to do everything else that I'm doing with like YouTube and the 2A thing and all those things. Well,
it sounds like what you're doing now is a type of mentorship, and I've been I don't know, I guess for about 10 years now, I've been on and off, making videos, introducing myself to people, being at events, being seen, being an advocate for my biggest thing is just gun safety. And I feel like my biggest impact personally is when I have a conversation with one person. And I feel like that's where I feel most useful, most at home. And so it's, for me personally, it's fun to travel around the country and be at different events and meeting cool people and making connections and forgetting them immediately. And but I think that as people who care about freedom, who care about truth, as much as that truth can suck sometimes. Like, the last episode last week when we were doing this, somebody popped into the chat in the middle of the episode and told us that they had come to our class last year, her and her sister got killed as an innocent bystander in a shooting a couple weeks ago. And like that was a rough moment, you know, because she basically saying, you know, I don't know how I feel about guns, but she came to our class, you know, and it's not our fault that her sister had passed away, but we can't ignore the truth that her sister was killed by somebody who's firing a gun into a crowd, you know. And so as people who care about stuff like that and people who care about safety, you know, I think for me personally, my goal is to treat every interaction like it's important. Every interaction with every gun owner or potential gun owner as it's important to me. It's important to me to give the right message. It's important to tell the truth. It's important to open people up to the whole picture, and that is a type of mentorship.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a long-term one, like
Correct.
you know, that girl that was in the class last night, I spoke to her for like 5 minutes, you know, but I take that interaction very, very seriously. And I don't mess around. I don't get lazy with it because, you know, who knows? That might be the last conversation she ever has with somebody about her firearm.
Correct.
You know?
It's such an important message, and I'm going to switch it up. Not switch it up. Sorry, I just need to announce this. Remember, guys, we're on multiple platforms. We're on 3 platforms. We're on my personal YouTube channel. We're on the Gun Expert channel. And we're also on Facebook. There's a lot of people asking questions. I guess not a ton of people, but there's been a few comments and questions on Facebook that I know Rhonda cannot see, and Isaac cannot see. So,
did you just call me a Nazi?
Cannot see. So I just want to remind you guys that we stream live to multiple platforms. So if you're on Facebook, Rhonda is definitely not going to be able to see that stuff. So you'd have to jump over to which one are you watching, Rhonda? The Gun Expert or my personal one?
I don't know. I'm in StreamYard.
Okay, so we have a question from Alicia. She says, Rhonda, come work with me teaching firearm safety and education to kids and teens in Colorado.
Can you see that?
Yep, I can see it.
Oh, okay, perfect. And everything I just said is bullshit. She can see all the comments.
Yeah, I was scrolling up to see, but then I saw Alicia's comment right there.
Okay, because Isaac's like, I can't see everything, motherfucker. Now everybody can see everything.
I'm dumb. I want to be able to respond to people by typing.
Yeah.
So I don't watch the StreamYard
chat.
I monitor the individual.
All right, never mind. Disregard everything.
That means
back to the heavy conversations. So I don't know. I fucked up the flow.
So Rhonda, you like working with kids?
Yes, I do.
And what has been your experience with working with kids? Like, what have you done? No, that came out wrong. What did you do?
What did you do?
So I've done basically I've worked as a mentor. And y'all, that was like, I think I was scratching it for 1 second there. I'm sorry. I've worked as a mentor. I've helped children find mentors. I've worked with children on like reading and things like that. I have been a speaker. I've done all kind of stuff.
And is that something that you plan to continue to do, either like in the immediate future or long term?
I had this one goal in mind, which I haven't really been as focused on recently. It may be something that it may be the next 10, 20 years before I am able to get around to doing it. Not that I couldn't do it now, but it just hasn't been on the front of my mind. But I've considered wanting to do a type of, like, having my own type of mentoring program for kids in the inner city, and basically connecting them with, I want to connect kids with, for example, right? Like, you have a Mexican 2A person, right? You might have some kids. I ain't never heard of a Mexican 2A person. A Mexican 2A person exists, right? Like, I've never seen a black doctor. Here's a black doctor. I've never seen, a woman in tech. Here's a woman that works in tech, right? And basically allowing kids to make connections. So it would almost be like, it would be like a networking. I want to do like a networking for children, for them to, because it's a lot of times it's hard for people to imagine what they haven't seen, regardless of how we try, or not we, but some people try to act like representation doesn't matter. You can really spark something in kids when they see somebody that looks like them. And now it's like, oh, like if he can do it, I can do it.
And that's so important. This is one of the things that I've been fighting with the 2A community for a very long time. And I've mentioned this before. I'm generally not that individual who's just like, hey, look at me, I'm Mexican. It's a fact, and it's a point that's will always be there.
Right.
But it's always been so important to me because I've been asked, like, what does it matter that you're Mexican, dude? Like, it matters the same reason that you cling on to Black Guns Matter, or you cling on to no other choice training and stuff like that when you try and use them for political points. People are seeing that, and if there's only certain shades of color there, then there's a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, they don't want me here. Like, I'm not.
Like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And like, that's the thing, right? Like, it's like, oh, they're helping give our 2A away. Like they're helping vote our 2A away. Like, is it your 2A? And then all of the representation that you get in the media, you seem to be totally fine with it. These people will make a hero out of the freaking McCloskeys, right? Like, you're choosing to do that. You're okay with the narrative that the media is sending, and you highlight it and support it, right? And this was some pushback I gave, because I'm like Trump's gonna sit here and invite the McCloskeys to the RNC, knowing how polarizing there is, when literally there was a picture that went viral of, I think it was like a black and a white guy, or it might have been like a couple of them, locking arms, standing there protecting a freaking store without pointing their guns at people.
Yeah.
Like, those are two different messages. Why does the one you seem to always choose kind of go a certain way? And so people like media is real, propaganda is real. And so if you're not going to combat it and you're going to feed into it, you cannot turn around and then be mad at the outcome.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Like, I'm sitting here saying, literally, before I was a gun owner, all I knew was gangster, white supremacist, school shooter. And I'm looking at that and I don't fit any of that. So I'm like, oh, that's not for me. Subconsciously, it's not like I'm sitting there saying, oh, well, they got that, so I can't do it. No, it's like it builds into.
So how do we penetrate the gatekeepers? Because there's a lot of times I'll be sitting here in the office, and I talked about this last week. The way my brain works is I could only work on stuff for like 10 minutes at a time, and then I have to go do something else. And so there's a lot of times like I want to make a video and talk shit to the 2A community because they're not letting Mexicans in. And it's just like, these motherfuckers are like gatekeeping. And you guys, there I go using white people language.
No, it's
use
you
guys
people.
Is you. Oh yeah, you people.
You say you people?
What do you mean? What do you mean, you people?
So the black community is 100% at you guys are like on top right now, and so I sit here.
I want to say though that like there is an element of pandering going on there too.
Oh, absolutely. A shit ton of it.
White people pandering to black people.
Oh, absolutely.
It happens in the Second Amendment community as well. It's not just
that's going on.
Like, black people are at the top of 2A right now.
Yeah, it's not just the 2A. It's just
it's a race.
The two guys, probably the two guys you can name.
No,
Yeah.
Well, but hold on.
Like, who are we talking about here? Hold on now.
Well, there's, I mean, you've got Tony Simon, you've got No Other Choice, Kevin Dixie, you got Argo J, you got Bacolian Nor, you've got Skip Tactical Solution, you've got the St. Louis couple,
Hank Strange.
Hank Strange. So there's a shit ton that we're not talking about. Reverend, what's his name? Ken.
And I want to clarify. I want to clarify what I think Edgar is saying. He's saying that based on where the social media and online attention seems to be right now. Like, to use Hank Strange as an example, like Hank Strange has no problem getting people to come on his podcast right now. Like, big names, little names, everybody.
Correct.
And there is a race going on in our own little world here of like, how many black people can we get on our side before the Democrats get them, you know?
Correct. Well,
and it's like the ugly truth of this in some way. This is not everything. This is not everything.
Here's my point though, and then you can yell at me after that.
But
here's my point. There's a lot of times when I'm sitting here trying to make a video, and I'm just like, okay, how do I say this in a way? Because like I understand the almost 1,000 years of struggle that the black community has gone through to get to this point where it's just like we're finally, even if it is pandering, we're still getting our voices being heard. There was this big you know, you get the boycotts in the Oscars and the Grammys and all this shit and stuff like that. I mean, there's a whole section of, if you go on Hulu, it's just like, oh, black excellence and shit like that. It's just like, oh shit, you have to scroll down all the way to the bottom to get to the Mexicans. So, and that's the shit that I'm talking about. So like, how do we penetrate that stuff? How do we approach it? Because again, the way I want to approach it without sounding bitter is just like, you motherfuckers, like, why is it that you could only have one at a time? Like, why can't we?
So let me address this. So you basically asking the black girl, how can you approach other black people and say, get out?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. How do you approach the entire community, not just black people? Because it's the gatekeepers. It's white 2A that says, okay, we're only going to accept so many minorities here, and we only got slots for 2 people or 1 person. And it's generally going to be Maj, and it's generally going to be Kevin Dixie, and it's generally going to be, and it's going to be the same people over and over and over again. It's going to be a recycle, not leaving room for the other people that are up and coming. And it's not just that they don't have a good message and a good voice and a good, it's just that there's always room for 1 minority. There's it used to be that there was only room for 1 black dude in Hollywood or in comedy or whatever. We're kind of doing the same thing, but for minorities overall in America. And it's definitely happening in the 2A.
So maybe I'm just not going to see these guys from your perspective, because I don't think I'm as deeply intertwined in the 2A. Yeah. But how I see it from my perspective as somebody that's like kind of, you know, coming in fresh is that the only 2 people that you named that I see being pushed are Colion and Maj. And those are because those 2 are because, you know, Colion had this huge NRA machine behind him. I believe, if I'm correct, he used to like work with the NRA. Mm-hmm. And then you had Maj that's basically worked super hard and worked his way into places like CPAC and things like this, where he's able to just expand his message, and he has an organization that like people really support. But these other people, I don't see them as being some type of, and that's like no shade to them. Like some of these people, I'm cool with, like I support them, I've met them, but these are just regular people on their own hustle, doing their own thing, trying to get their own word out. I don't see some major push.
So like Skip Tactical Solution, she's got the backing of USCCA. So
I don't think I
yeah.
I don't think I'm
And that's the other thing is you'll see organizations like USCCA, the NRA, Black Gun Owner, or I'm sorry, Gun Owners of America, shit like that, funneling money to Black organizations, but not to any other.
So I will say this, right? 2A is for everybody. It's
Yes.
for everybody. Okay?
That's our name. Say it. Guns for everyone.
Okay? I'm like Oprah. You get a gun, you get a gun, you get
Correct.
a gun. Okay?
Yeah.
So guns are really for everyone. However, a lot of times when we are dealing with people that are talking about it, advocating for it, and things like this, particularly when it comes to organizations, these tend to be most times more maybe like conservative or libertarian leaning type spaces. So therefore, right, oftentimes in these spaces, they're just responding to everything the Democrats do. So, oh, they got Black people. We need Black people. Trust me, y'all time is coming. They already fighting. Okay, people were just mad. Hispanics in general. Okay, Shakira and J-Lo just got up there and did their thing after Jay-Z literally said, "Okay, we making this about Black Lives Matter." Then he got up there and gave us Hispanics. You see what I'm saying? So y'all time is coming. I've seen people. It's not enough representation at the award shows and stuff like this. I'm telling you, we have about maybe 4 to 8 years before like the media throws us away. It's going to be y'all turn.
No, but that's the problem though, is it shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't be recycled, because I think that just adds to the systemic racism that exists in our nation, that it's okay that we sit here and say it's okay for Black people to have their moment in for 4 to 8 years, and then Mexicans will have their moment for 48 years, and then Asians will have their moments for 2 years.
No.
For 2 years.
They're not getting their moment. That's not happening.
That's the culture, right? That's the culture that the media in Hollywood has created. They've created that, and so now everybody is responding, and everybody's fighting for their spotlight, their shine. Everybody wants to be the special other.
So I want to acknowledge what you just said there, and I had never thought about this, and it 100% makes sense. It's just that they're just, it's a mirror reflection of what the other side is doing. Like that makes sense to me. So
I promise you, if you didn't have all these other people on the TV and doing all these other things, and them always using Black faces to speak out about guns, wouldn't have the same response. None of them care. Like, let's just be honest.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because now the little kids that are caged up for no reason at the border, the Democrats ain't talking about anymore. So those kids don't.
Turn.
Yeah,
it's gonna roll back around.
But again, it's just, how do we change that in our culture? Because I think we have the platform now to kind of start snowballing that change. So how do we go to the NRA? Well, the NRA is kind of moot at this point. Nobody likes them. But to Gun Owners of America, how do we go to the libertarians? How do we go to all these places? Listen, motherfuckers, you can't just pander. Like, this is everybody. Like, because we all have struggles. My biggest issue with going out there and voicing this as much is because I don't want to undermine the fact that there is a struggle that the Black community is going through. So if I look like the shady fucker, is just like, oh, he's just talking shit about Black people. Like, no, that's not the case. The thing is like, we should all be kind of, because if it is guns for everyone, not the organization, but the reality, if it is that, then there shouldn't be a revolving door of minorities that are just coming through, and it's just like, oh, it's Black people now, oh, it's Mexicans now, oh, it's whatever now, gay people now. So it's got to be like this consistent flow till we get to the point where it's just like, oh, fuck, I guess guns are for everyone. It's not just for Black people and white people. And then 4 years, it's Mexicans and white people. So, I noticed that the white people never get knocked down.
No, they do not. So I like, something came to my mind when I was listening to you guys, and I'm gonna say it, and maybe it'll make sense, maybe it won't. But when I grew up, No, it's not a boomer statement. It's not a boomer. I promise. When I was growing up, I grew up in a neighborhood, had a bunch of kids in the neighborhood, and there were insiders in the neighborhood and there were outsiders.
Yeah.
And sometimes you needed the outsiders in the neighborhood to
I like that mug,
accomplish-
by the way.
Oh yes, gift yours today.
Actually, someone in the comments is like telling Edgar, you got to say y'all, otherwise she won't understand you. So sometimes in the neighborhood, we needed the outsiders to deal with a bigger problem. But as soon as we were done with that bigger problem, those outsiders were outsiders again. They did not matter to us. In fact, they were enemies again until we needed them. And I think if you look back over history, that's a really basic human dynamic, which is I don't like you, I don't want anything to do with you until there's a bigger problem that comes along, and then I need your help, and then we will be on the same team again. And then as soon as we're done with that, we're not on the same team anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't even take a deep look at any history for that to be true. I mean, for you to be able to see that kind of stuff. And I don't see a narrative going on in our culture in the US right now that says we need the Mexicans. Like right now it's and it has been for the whole time that Trump has been president. Trump's a racist. Trump is evil. Black people all need to vote Democrat. Gun owners are like, hey, no, that's not true. You know, black people are welcome over here too. Koyan Noir is a safe black person, so we'll put him up with the NRA. We'll back him up with the NRA, and it's okay. Like black people, you can come to our side too. Like, look, we got guns. Like, check it out, we got guns. The other side doesn't want to give you guns. We want to give you guns, you know. And then when the moments pass, it's like that relationship is not going to be as important. And I don't know what's going to happen, but what I haven't seen a cultural discussion around Latinos like I've seen around black people.
Correct.
And it's like nobody's fighting over the Mexicans right now. We're only fighting over the black people. And so and that's a long history. That history goes back pretty far. And so when I say there's pandering going on, I'm not trying to denigrate the whole community. I'm saying at the top levels, at the same levels that we would consider the media at, there definitely is some pandering going on. The NRA is pandering. Other organizations.
But then again, are they really? Like, are they seriously? Do we seriously think the NRA is trying to reach real everyday black people? Or is it like, oh, here's our participation trophy?
Yeah, I mean, it's more that. It's more that. But when they pick people like Koyan,
it's to
or even Gun Owners of America picking people like Maj, this is, I don't know, this is like a new world because you can't control Koyan or Maj like you could control prior generations. So like Gun Owners of America wants to throw money. Was it GOA that threw money at Maj originally?
Yeah, but that in all fairness, that was a completely different deal. Like I got to be objective and say that I really don't think that GOA was trying to pander there.
No, not trying to pander. What I'm saying though is if you expect to be able to control the message, you're wrong. And I don't think
correct.
GOA thought that they could control Maj or control the message, but I think the NRA thought that they could control Koyan to some degree.
Correct.
Absolutely. And that was all that's all an image thing. Like whether people want to admit or not, it's see, we're not racist. He works for us type vibe. And don't be wrong. Like I wanna
we're not racist. We bought this guy too.
Like look, and so like let me be clear, there's no shade to anybody's work or what they
well, and I think that Koyan standing on his own. Yeah, I think that Koyan standing on his own 2 feet after the NRA and him split ways, like that demonstrates that Koyan is his own person. And I think I think the answer might be that you got to be able to just build your own thing. And if you get noticed, then that's great. But I understand Maj a lot better than I understand Koyan. And Maj's attitude is like, I don't care who supports me. I'm going to do my thing. and I'm going to go to the hood and I'm going to bring my message to the hood. I'm going to take it direct. I don't need any help from anybody.
That piece of shit just bought a bus. Did you see it?
A bus?
Yeah, the fucking piece of shit. And I say that in the most envious of ways, by the way. This motherfucking piece of shit, look at him.
He's got a tour bus. Oh man, I got to get on that bus at some point. I got to get on that bus.
We were talking about having a tour bus a while back, and then this piece of shit fucking ta-da. And again, I say that in a very envious tone.
So
super salty tone, motherfucker.
I honestly, and maybe I should be embarrassed to say this, I don't know what the Latino and Mexican history with guns and the Second Amendment in this country is.
Ask the motherfuckers at the Alamo. They'll tell you what's up with the Second Amendment. Pancho Villa went up there and fucking dick slapped a few people. I mean, we lost at the end, but
but like it's well documented, the history of Black people and gun control and the use of guns. Even though it's not talked about, it's still documented. You can go find this information.
Correct.
As far as Mexicans and Latinos go, I don't know. You know, like, do you have a history that you can stand on? That
our history in America is so different because we were in the South. We were already here, and then kind of because of wars and wars lost and a roundabout way of stolen land, we all of a sudden, because I mean, even it's very different. It's just very different. The history is just very different because we didn't come here as slaves. We fought the U.S. in different ways. We had our shit stolen in different ways. We had our very much like the Native Americans. It's kind of like ta-da, and then all of a sudden, like, we had guns, but it wasn't guns in the U.S. It was the territory is now the U.S., but it was Mexico. But there was guns for hunting and there was guns for self-defense. Guns for self-defense is in the Mexican Constitution. Like, that is legit in the Mexican Constitution. A lot of people think that Mexicans don't have guns. Like, yeah, it's different. There's a lot of restrictions. But in the U.S., that's when the tone changes. The tone changes to this. My uncle has guns in Mexico. Not the ones that are part of the cartel, but legit, this guy's a professor. And he's got guns for self-defense. Here in the U.S., it's different because generally speaking, you go to inner city schools. Those inner city schools have a curriculum that's taught by a school board or that's where the curriculum comes from. The school board who is often on the opposite side of the conversation, who says, well, Mexicans shouldn't own guns, or nobody should own guns, and their nobody just happens to be all Mexican because that's who's all there. So now you got a bunch of Mexicans who are like, well, I shouldn't own guns because the school said not to own guns. And that's my experience with that shit. So yeah, I mean, it's just a much more complex conversation. Also, the hatred towards Mexicans, I've said this for a while, is a relatively new hatred. Just because we are so new to this country, as opposed to the slaves who fucking came here when the 1600s. If I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there in the 1600s.
1609.
Yeah, so it was a long time ago. Like, hating Mexicans is like early 1900s, late 1800s. And that's kind of when that happened. The whole marijuana shit was a big one. We got blamed for marijuana. The reefer madness shit, we got blamed for that shit. So
we got blamed for Cheech and Chong.
We got blamed for Cheech and Chong.
1619, not 1609. Yeah, and it's complex. It's really, really complex. And my default when things get complex is always to be, what is the simplest answer? The simplest answer always starts with you. What can you do?
Correct.
And what can you do? What you've done. I mean, you've been teaching classes and preaching I guess, I don't know how to say it, but a safe version of brown pride to the gun community for the last like decade, you know.
Yeah, but even in my classes, I never make them a Mexican thing. I say I'm Mexican, but
you are a Mexican.
Yeah, no, but I never go up there and be like, oh, I'm part of a brown coalition that's trying to advance brown color.
I'm gonna say this, coming from a white dude, white people notice that stuff.
Like when I say I'm Mexican?
Yeah, white people notice that the guy teaching the class is an ESL Mexican.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but I don't think the brown people receive it that way. I think for us, and that's why I've been changing my tune. And maybe it's different for the black community, but I don't think Mexicans receive it that way. I think if Mexicans, the way they respond in class when it's an English class is very different than when I teach a Spanish class. Like I get a lot more connection when I'm teaching the Spanish class.
Well, they probably feel safer.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's the same as if it was just I don't know if it's the same in your culture, Rhonda. Like if you see
Spanish.
No, I know that, but like if you went to like a fucking TED Talk and you were there and the person happened to be that black lady cop who said own guns versus the black lady cop teaching a class for nothing but the black community, like if it hits different, if it impacts differently.
Now it probably did at some point. Like I grew up around a lot of black people. Like I hang out with black people. So unless it's them doing something that I never saw somebody doing before or I never thought about, then it'll hit different. If that makes sense. So I think why the lady telling me about the gun stood out so much, because it's like, oh, you know. So that's, you know, other than that, if it's good information, I mean, whatever.
Correct.
I think that when people when brown people come to your class, Edgar, and it's an English speaking class and they're surrounded by white people, I mean, if I was in that position, I'd be trying to blend into the chair. You know, I'd be like, yeah, this guy's Mexican and everything, but like I'm surrounded by white people, you know, in their Carhartt jeans and they're chewing tobacco and they're, you know, I think that's probably why you see a different tone from people when it's a Spanish speaking class, because then everybody's like, oh, all right, we're all on the same team here. All right, cool. I can loosen up a little bit, you know. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's always important to preach the message of, you know, hey, we're all human beings. We all have the same interest here. We're all trying to protect ourselves. And I mean, that's only going to go so far, but it does mean something.
Correct.
When the first time we saw Maj speak was in Compton, and it was a very different vibe, it felt like to me than Atlanta, because Maj speaking to the hood in the way that the hood is used to being talked to was one thing, but in Atlanta you had a bunch of white people trying to sell them something.
Correct.
And then Maj gets up there and it was a totally different feeling.
Correct.
You know, so I don't know what the best way for you, Edgar.
Different from how he spoke to both?
No, he spoke the same.
It's how it gets responded to, because in Atlanta we were in this kind of yuppie range, really nice range. It's nothing bad against that range. Stoddard's, is that what it's called?
Stoddard's, yeah.
Yeah, Stoddard's range in Atlanta. So it was in a kind of, if I'm not mistaken, relatively gentrified area.
Downtown Atlanta, I'm sure it is gentrified.
Yeah, so relatively gentrified area. You still had the same students, if you will. It's still the students were urban, but the setting wasn't. The setting was very yuppie. And when we were in Compton, well, it's fucking Compton. I mean, the range that we were in had been there for decades. It's the range that Tupac shot his. He did an interview there, just to give you an idea how old this range is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a new range. It's dingy.
At the time, it was still owned by the same guy who'd owned it for 30 years.
Correct. So it's Compton, like it's fucking Compton. So the interaction was just very, very different. The conversation, in my opinion, was a lot more real there than it was in Atlanta. Not because of what Maj said, but they wanted answers. Like these motherfuckers came in there and they're like, we don't give a fuck that you're Maj Touré. We don't give a fuck that there's cameras here. Like we want fucking answers. Like how do we approach this? I don't want you coming in here. In Atlanta, it was a little bit more like, oh, okay, I guess that's the information and we're just going to take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Atlanta, it felt like white people were running it. And in Compton, it felt like black people were running it. And so you got a different response from the crowd, a very different response from the crowd. And I think both of them were successful in their own way. But when we're talking about brown people in your class in a Spanish-speaking class versus brown people in a class surrounded by white people, you know, it's going to feel different. It's definitely going to feel different.
So a little bit of a sidebar, like y'all like really cool with being called brown people. Like y'all like really say that. I thought that was like a TV talking point. Like I didn't know like that was a real thing.
Well, if Rachel Maddow can say it, then I can say
it. For me, it's for me. I don't get too caught up in that stuff. You know, when I say brown or whatever, like I'm just encompassing everybody because me personally, I don't like being called Latino. I don't like being called Hispanic. I say that I don't. I don't.
You rather be called brown?
I'd rather be called Mexican.
You rather be called Mexican? Why? Yeah. What's your beef with Hispanic and Latino? I feel like this is interesting. I want to know this.
Because white people created the word. It wasn't Mexicans that created Latino. It wasn't Mexicans that created Hispanic. It wasn't Puerto Ricans. It was white people that created a word to identify a collective, as opposed to, like, I never got a vote in it. My family never got a vote in being called Hispanic or Latino or anything like that. So,
but you think brown people, you feel more connected to brown people?
I don't know. I feel indifferent about that. I feel very indifferent about, because it's stating a fact. And I also come from a culture where in Mexico we would call you a negra. Like if I were to call you that in English, like it'd be like a big no-no. So in Mexico, it's esa es una muchacha, or el negro, which literally translates to Negro.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like in Mexico, it's just the color. It's just saying. Right. Mm-hmm. So for me, as I'm identifying it with a color, not necessarily with the derogatory thing. Also, like when I say brown, I guess for me personally, it's not. I don't get called that by white people. Like I just don't. Yeah.
Except me.
Except Isaac.
and I say it ironically because he's whiter than I am. But so let me flip that question on you, because I don't get the opportunity to ask this question very often, especially people who are from the deep South.
So I gotta address this really quick, because everybody says that you're the whitest Mexican I know. You need to learn about more Mexicans. Because I'm telling you, if you guys actually went to Mexico, there'd be a lot of motherfuckers that would make me look brown in Mexico that don't speak a lick of, never been to the U.S., never. There's a place in Guadalajara called Los Altos de Guadalajara. It's nothing but fucking white dudes, skin-wise, color-wise, white, 6 feet tall, green eyes, blonde hair. But anyways, your question.
So to get to ask somebody who's from the deep South, I'm gonna make an assumption here that your family's lived in that area for a long time.
Yes.
In Mississippi.
Yes.
So how do you feel about A, just the term black, B, white people saying black, and C, is there something else that you call yourself or that you think is more appropriate, fits you better?
I am completely okay with like Black American or black, like that doesn't bother me. And why I say it doesn't bother me is because, and this is why I thought it was weird to want to be called brown people, is because like Edgar literally knows like where he's from. Like he can trace his lineage and his heritage back to Mexico. I, however, don't trust those freaking DNA spit swab tests. Okay. And, you know, a lot of my history, particularly on my father's side, has just been kind of lost in time. And so for all intents and purposes, I'm a foundational Native Black American. That's who I am. So I don't have a problem with being called so. And like if I knew, I don't think I would like even when I say Black, right? Even when I say Black, my mind thinks like Black American. Like I'm not even thinking about a Nigerian American or a Jamaican American or, you know, whatever.
So I have two more questions for you. Number one, what do you think about the term ADOS, or African Descendant of Slavery?
I really like ADOS. I like them. I like it as a movement. I like that they are. I say they, like I'm not like kind of within that. I like that they're very like politically focused and driven, and it's like own community, and so like I'm cool. Like I have a lot of people in ADOS that follow me, and I follow and stuff like that. And so, you know, in some ways, it's looked at as like a signifier of lineage, and then you still have people that, yes, they're gonna look at it as like an organization, because technically when people are using that term, they have this goal in mind most of the time, right? So I'm not really tripping off of it. Like I'll, if I'm trying to make a point, like I'll use that term on Twitter and stuff like that.
My interaction with that has I've only just become aware of this term, and my exposure to it is a term of lineage, not a political term. So if I didn't even know it was like a political thing, I thought it was just a lineage type thing.
So I've seen it used. I've seen it used interchangeably, even though it's not really supposed to be. But I have seen people kind of use it that way because of the way it started.
Mm-hmm.
The way, you know, people started using that term.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a problem with somebody saying you know, ADOS. I don't, just being a YouTuber and a content creator, and knowing that it does also somewhat have like a political side to it. I don't get just too tied to it just because of just how stuff goes.
Yeah.
So I
kind
of keep myself, you know.
It's crazy how we have to dissect our own language so much, you know, just to make sure we're not saying something we don't intend to say, you know. It's very complicated. So then my last question to you, and there's no strings attached here. I just want to know, because I don't get a chance to ask this very often. Is Kamala Harris Black?
Oh
no.
Kamala Harris is Black, okay? Kamala Harris is Black. She's just not my type of Black. There's different types of Black. That's why I was just talking about this earlier. When I say, this is just for me, this is my personal thing. When I say Black American, I am thinking people like me. I have an uncle that's Jamaican American, right? So when I say Black American, I'm not necessarily thinking about it. It doesn't go in that thing for me. It's just like if Edgar is talking about a Mexican versus a Puerto Rican or something like that, right? You have these different groups of people within a group of people. And so, yes, Kamala Harris is Black, right? She's just not she's not like civil rights Black. I think that's the, you know, distinction people are trying to make, and they they just want her to be honest about who she is and her lineage, as opposed to trying to tie herself to civil rights struggles, when the truth is that a lot of these people, like her parents, immigrated here. You weren't brought here without knowing your history. You know where your mom is from. You know where your dad is from. And so with somebody like her, like the confusion with me and Edgar earlier, I'm like, why do you call yourself Brown? Kamala, Kamala, all right?
Kamala.
You can say exactly where you're from. Why not just say it? Why try to say, oh, I'm black or brown, when my uncle will most likely say, oh, I'm a Jamaican American? You see what I'm saying? And how it gets.
So
I actually 100% can't tell you where my lineage comes from. I could say it's Spain, but there's a lot of Mexican, there's a lot of German influence in Mexico. There's a lot of other cultures in Mexico. Jamaican, there's a lot of Caribbean influence in Mexico. I definitely don't think there's any Caribbean in my lines, but definitely native and stuff like that.
So is Kamala? I'm tacking on one more question. Is Kamala trying to pass? Is she trying to pass? Or is she like...
Do you think I know all black people?
No.
You were just like, no.
Hey, I have a black friend. Do you know him? Because this is the reason why, to me, that this is relevant. The reason why this is relevant is because...
Hold on, let me timestamp that shit, because we're gonna have to replay that shit.
The reason why this to me is relevant is because she's running on her color, and in this country, there's an implicit connection between her color and her connection to a civil rights history, which personally she does not share.
Right.
Personally, now maybe she has walked the streets and been mistreated because of the color of her skin. But it seems to me from the outside looking in that people who have a history here in this country that goes back a couple hundred years are looking at somebody like Kamala and being like, why are you trying to take from us what is ours to use it for your own gain? But I don't know if that's true. That's, again, kind of the media coming in and just being like, oh, you don't want to vote for her. She's not really black, and I'm not voting for her, but I would like to understand the dynamic from just a personal perspective, not like your opinion represents even your own family's opinion, let alone, everybody or the whole black community, but just coming from somebody who comes from the Deep South and sees this happening.
I'm gonna save Isaac here and just say, we usually preface this by saying we don't expect you to represent everybody.
Yeah.
We just want your...
Well, one of the things I like about this podcast is that we try to take the opportunity to ask the stupid questions that we're afraid to ask under normal circumstances.
And when we say stupid, we had a friend of ours who was born a man and became a woman. And that was my question. Did you cut it off? Like, it was...
Here's a stupid question for you.
Here's a stupid question for you. Did you cut it off? So, not that makes it any better, but I just want to... I see Isaac struggling here and trying to wiggle it.
I'm not struggling yet. I have not yet begun to struggle.
I absolutely do think that... she's trying to present herself a certain way. And I think a lot of people can kind of see through that. And if it works or not, I guess we'll find out. But she's definitely trying to play both sides of the field. I guess that's a good way to say that. I think she could have just literally came out being, like, hey, I'm part Jamaican, I'm part Indian, this is what my life was like. This is what my school life was like. And this kind of goes back to Edgar, what Edgar was saying earlier. And we were kind of talking about the pandering thing a little bit, right? Like, yes, you do have, like, I mean, let's just be real. In America, Black people, like, we're cool, like, we got all the good music, like, we're great entertainers, we have style, it's we play a huge part in pop culture. However, regardless of how people want to feel about that. And so, yes, in certain areas, particularly when it comes to like Hollywood and media and stuff like that, we're popping right now. And so to see her use that to her advantage, I'm not particularly shocked by that. I'm not. I'm sure other people would use whatever they can to their advantage. Like Edgar says, yeah, I want to be the 2A Mexican guy, because that in some ways, I'm sure even being able to speak Spanish in some ways will work out in your favor. You know what I mean? So you're going to have people that take advantage of that in different ways. And some of it may be malicious intent. Some of it may be pandering. Some of it may be to just get over or get to, some type of end. But yeah, I definitely think she's doing that.
To be fair, Joe Biden and Donald Trump are both passing right now for working class. So it's like passing happens across the board when it comes to politics.
And here's what I have to say, and this is going to sound weird because I'm definitely not trying to defend Harris, because her and I probably disagree on everything. Maybe food. We'd probably agree on food. But she probably didn't even choose the type of pandering that she was doing. Because when she first won in 2016, it was the media that said it's the first Indian whatever. It was the people that were inviting her on shows. She was on what's her name? Mindy. She plays she's in The Office. The Indian chick from The Office.
They did like the cooking show.
Yeah, the cooking show, and she was the one that like, oh, you're Indian, so that's why I have you here, because you're Indian type shit. That's not what was said, but that was essentially it. Like, oh, you're Indian, and
Did she start talking Indian like she was trying to talk black on the Breakfast Club? Man, you listen to her on the Breakfast Club, you're like, this is not the same person.
Yeah. So no, she wasn't doing that, but I think sometimes you also, again, we get it. Like when you go out and about and people know that you do gun stuff, Isaac, everybody's like, oh, what do you think about this new gun? And what do you think? And sometimes you like it, and other times you're just like, I don't want to talk about that shit.
Talking about guns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think sometimes these people don't even choose the type of pandering that they're going to do. They just kind of pushed into it, and then you have that decision to make, like, oh, am I going to be the Mexican gun guy, or am I going to be or am I just going to shy away from that shit type of stuff?
I want to call out Joseph Andrews, because he said, hey, Rhonda, specifically. So I don't know if you saw that. Maybe you know this guy, maybe you don't, but if it
yeah, I think that's one of my supporters. I saw a couple of my supporters coming on here. I reposted the thing to my community tab.
Cool. So I wanted to kind of get back to the whole idea of how you, not you specifically, but how
I just want to show this shit again.
Oh yeah.
These are all Mexicans.
Wow.
In Mexico. In Jalisco.
So I have a theory about this, and it's gonna sound bad, and it might be bad, but I'm just gonna say it, and you can tell me if you think I'm right.
Counsel you, but I'll do it.
No, it's gonna be bad for Edgar, not for
well,
you.
and see, here's the thing. This is why I enjoy having these conversations, because they might be uncomfortable for a second, but like, this is how we learn. This is how we learn how to communicate with each other. This is how we learn how to kind of float around and no longer be ignorant. Let's get uncomfortable.
So typically speaking, across all cultures, the darker you are, the lower you are on the totem pole, right? To use an insensitive reference, the totem pole. But generally speaking, if you're darker, you're going to be doing worse in society. And so, is it possible that the reason why everybody doesn't believe that Edgar's actually Mexican until he opens his mouth is because he's a light-skinned Mexican, and most of the time we don't see light-skinned Mexicans in the U.S. because it's not light-skinned Mexicans who are coming across the border because of economic hardships or whatever. Like, mostly when you go to federal, if you go to federal and Colfax, you are seeing brown people. You are not seeing people that look like Edgar. You're seeing more dark skinned people
Yeah,
who are leaving their home and coming to the US. And
well,
so
or a lot of people assume that the white Mexicans that they're seeing are just not Mexican.
right.
So you see them, you just don't identify them as being the Mexican ones. They're just another white dude driving by.
Yeah. Well, I don't see a lot of white Mexicans driving the F-150 with the flare fenders and like
La Virgen de Guadalupe in the back.
If there's white Mexicans, they blend in a lot better than the brown Mexicans. And like I think it's just a general rule that when you see a Mexican person, you think brown because that's mostly the color.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there. Like it came up in my head. Like when you showed that picture.
I don't know how true that is because we have people like and like not even Mexican, right? But if we're just talking about brown people in general, then you turn around and you have people like J-Lo and you have people like Shakira and you have people like, so I think that's just another case of the media doing what it does and it's creating a narrative. Mm-hmm. I always see brown people, right? And particularly dark skinned Hispanic people talking about how they don't get the spotlight in media. Marla Negra is somebody that recently not only spoke out about this, but recently became popular because of her dark skin, her accent, and her afro. So that's just the media is going to highlight a certain thing for certain reasons. We know there are also white men that also get shot by the police. How often do we see these stories in the media? So we have to put the blame where it is. I think the narrative, the media plays a really big part in this narrative. I don't even know if that was answering your question. I really didn't even understand the question.
Yeah, and it's more for Edgar based on his own experience. Like if I watch Mexican TV, everybody on TV is very white. Especially compared to like the blue collar Mexicans I see in Denver. If I watch Mexican TV, I'm seeing white hosts. They've got some Mexican or Latino features where like maybe a little bit on the females, the cheekbones kind of stick out a little bit more, and they definitely have that, like, for lack of a better word, Latina facial structure. But in general, these people are white. But they're at the top tier of the society. They're the successful media types. And if you go to Spain, that's all you see. I mean, Spain is full of white people. And so I think that's where people get confused, because if I see a white person speaking Spanish, I'm like, oh, they're from Spain. That's my first thought. They must be from Spain,
Yeah.
And if that's... And maybe that comes from the media, and maybe
but this shit happens everywhere you go, and I don't think it's any different here. But
I'm sorry, Edgar. Like I just feel like because I don't know. I wasn't trying to interrupt you, but I'm the darkest person in the chat. And I'm saying, like, white people have always tried to make themselves the standard of beauty. That's everywhere you go.
No, and that's where I was going with that. Like you see that everywhere. Like even it's absolutely true. Like even in Mexico, I mean, if you are darker skin, you're gonna be called that. Like one of the most real things that I've seen meme wise was this idea that Mexicans will take your insecurities and make it your nickname. And it's 100% true. And like my brother, he's dark. My youngest brother, he's not from the same dad. And so he came out a lot darker than myself and the middle brother, a lot darker. So we call him Negro. That's just what we call him. He's got darker skin, so we just call him Negro. So even within that family dynamic, it's you acknowledge that stuff. And so it does happen. It 100% happens.
I get asked all the time if I'm Mexican, and I get asked usually in the summertime when I've got more of a tan. People are like, "I thought you were Mexican." I'm like, "No, I'm German. Like I've almost 100% German." But the darker I get, the more questions I get. Are you Mexican? You know, and it's just like it's funny to me because everybody thinks Edgar's white until they hear him talk. And then everybody thinks I'm Mexican until they hear me talk. I mean, I had Mexicans on a job site one time speaking Spanish to me, and they were surprised when I didn't speak Spanish.
They're gonna share lunch with you, and all of a sudden, like, never mind.
You know, and so and I'm like, that's not me saying that. That's Mexican saying that to me. And so it's complicated, you know, and that's why like I like to be able to especially to have my one Mexican friend where I can ask these questions. No, I'm not racist. I have a friend who's Mexican.
I have a friend who's Mexican.
Because it does play into it because people do make assumptions about people everybody you meet is going to make an assumption about you one way or the other as soon as they meet you. And it could be the color of your skin. It could be your accent. It could be the words you use. Edgar's extremely intelligent, but he messes up a lot of English words because he's ESL, you know? And so when he says something wrong, people are like, stupid Mexican, doesn't know anything, you know? And it's no, this guy's probably smarter than you are. He just didn't learn this language first.
Correct. Know? English is my second language. And a lot of people don't understand, even the conversation we're having right now, a lot of it, I have to translate it to English. Because I'm like, it's really hard because Spanish is my first language. I want to absorb everything in Spanish. So like when you guys are talking, like my head's like in Spanish and like, fuck, I got to translate this shit. And then there's a lot of words that you guys will say that are very similar in Spanish. And those are a lot easier for me to kind of receive and translate and shit like that. So a lot of conversations I'm having to translate as it's coming. And it's weird. Even at 35 years of age, having spoken almost nothing but English throughout my entire life, even though it is my second language, like I still have to kind of translate all that shit.
It's complicated.
Yeah. Furthermore, ASMR, this shit gets boring sometimes, fool. Take it or leave it. It absolutely gets boring sometimes, and sometimes here's the thing. To that is sometimes we want to have a conversation and we only want to give it 2 minutes, and it's such a complex conversation where it's just like we got to decipher this shit a little bit more. I think sometimes we just want to have a conversation, hurry up, and that conversation go somewhere else because we live in the society where it's just like, I want 2 seconds and that's it, really quick, 2 seconds and that's it, because we live in an age where your social media gets given to you in 1 minute. So if you can't say it in 1 minute, then obviously it's not fast enough. But that doesn't give enough context to everything. Sometimes, like, and maybe that's why we're so broken in this society, because we just want to hurry up. I don't give a fuck about what you say or what you feel. Just give it to me in 1 minute and that's it. So it does get shit. I feel that way sometimes when we're in our podcast. Like, why the fuck are we still talking about that shit? But it's a complex issue.
We're digging until we can't dig our way out. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah. So we have been at it for 2:20. Any more questions or anything that you guys want to add?
Well, I want to thank Rhonda for coming on the show and putting up with me. And I'm sorry that initially I forgot meeting you. It's not personal. I forget meeting. I have this problem in my classes where I see there's a lot of common faces I see, especially I say this with white people because I have more white people in my classes. I see the same facial type all the time, and I'm like, I know that person. and then I'll say something like, "Have I met you before?" And they're like, "No." And so I get like it goes both ways. I forget people I met, and then I think I met people who I've never met before. So it's not you, it's me.
Anyway, where can you be found, Rhonda? Where are all your social medias? And not that you need anything. This is I have 10,000 followers.
Who has 10,000 followers?
Don't you have 10,000 followers?
Like 400 away. So I'm trying to get there.
Oh, okay.
That's basic. That's close enough.
That's 10,000.
It's hard. It's hard to get that high in the first place. So
correct.
You're basically there.
You're basically there.
So you guys, I can be found at Rhonda Mary Vids, Rhonda Mary VIDS on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. I would love for you to come on over to my YouTube so we can reach this 10,000. However, I talk the most noise on Twitter, so I can be found there as well. Don't forget to get y'all Hey Y'all mugs. All of my bios as well.
So I'm gonna have Rhonda's different social media stuff in the show notes. I posted already in the chat once. I'll post it again. But you can find her there, and throw her some support, throw her a comment, let her know what you think of her, but only if it's good.
I take the bad stuff too. It keeps the algorithms going.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. See, a lot of people don't understand that. So when people come in and they're like, I'm getting bored, it's just like, you're still commenting. So like, let's just keep this shit. Because you're absolutely right. It keeps the algorithms going. So that's why we always appreciate the comments. You can find us, you know where to find us, upnnow.com, sayiwon't.live, gunsforeveryone.com, firearmstrainingcentral.com, armasparatodos.com, which reminds me, I think that goes live tomorrow. So yeah, absolutely. We done?
I think so. Thank you, guys. Thanks for the comments in the naysayer room, and please come back next time. We're going to be talking about some more uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys. Thanks a lot, Rhonda.
All right, bye y'all.